My name's Seamus Breslin, and we're out today making a film. And our family, the Breslin family, was known as Tilly Boys, which meant that 6 out of 7 sons in the family for years would have sold the local papers around here, the Belfast Telegraph. And in the early 1970s, the old Tilly office was set on fire down here, so they moved up to a temporary building here. It was basically just a garage. Just across here from what was then Woolworths, and this is where we waited. And that street there was called Richmond Street, probably why it's named the Richmond Centre, and it led you over on the Shippy Street. So we would wait here, and we would get up to all the wee devilment that young boys would get up to while we were waiting on the newspapers coming from Belfast. And then once they went in here, the man called Billy Merton and the security man, you would get issued them with your dozens of papers. And the quicker you get out, the better, because the first person that hit the streets could start selling straight away. So there was a hierarchy where the older boys got their papers first and that, so you just had to learn your way. We got a couple of dozen, stuck them on under the arm, headed out, hail, rain or snow. It was a crazy world of the 70s, bombings and shootings, and we got up here and everybody in had their own wee cry for Tilly. Mine was Tilly, Tilly. My friend Busty Rush, I'll show you a picture of him later, as his cry used to be, away, away. So we all had our own wee cry, and we had all our own wee runs, we had our own wee stops, and we had our own wee customers. Some of them are very generous and give you, and some of the things we encountered on the way around were absolutely unbelievable. But it was the 1970s, and it was just after Bloody Sunday, and Motorman, and the Claudy bombings and that, so things were pretty dire around here. So, our wages for that day, you could not have survived on what you earned. So as you can see there, the papers were priced at 4p. So you always tried to catch them and say you had no change, mister. And they would give you a shilling, so you got an extra penny. But you got a penny for selling the paper. So you had to sell a lot of papers to make your money. But what you actually made your money out really was tips. Especially if you could catch the boys drunk, coming out of pubs, you know, and trying to, they wanted to get the written results off it and that. And one of the most important things, apart from the headlines to see what was going on the troubles, was everybody would look straight away to find out who was dead, because there used to be a list of the deaths down the side of the paper. So everybody had their own wee run, and I had my wee run, and if you want, we'll walk around here and I'll show you it. So we headed up here with our papers. So once you get round and you sorted your customers out, and sometimes you would leave your customers to litter depending on what the crowd was like, but everybody had that permanent stand as well. And my permanent stand was here at this corner here. So I'd stand here. It was handy because I was able to get resupplies of papers if I needed them down here, and would stand here and you'd be shouting Tilly, Tilly, you'd be sailing away. And even though we were from Craigan and that, one of our favourite times of the year was the apprentice boys parades, because they were big buyers of the paper and they were good tippers as well. So we used to come home, my mother was glad to see us coming home with the pockets all full of money and the coins and that. So we would have witnessed a lot of things along here. I remember somebody planted a bomb in a chemist shop here, and the soldiers actually tied a rope around them and made them go back in and bring it out. And then it would be just bomb scares. And our word then was, our instructions were, if you see anybody running, you were to run as well, and run along them, and run faster than them, and get away. It's all changed here now. A lot of buildings the same. So this was actually Richmond Street, which was a street where cars could drive across, and the buildings were all demolished. There was slum housing, and bombs had a lot to do with too. But you'd see the Tilly boys all charging over here, laden down with their papers, all anxious to start selling. And you would start selling straight away. Somebody would stop you, you'd start saying you always wanted to get your change out quick and get on with it. And so you'll see them all heading on, proceeding down there, because the main selling point The top selling point was right down here at the Guildhall, and outside what was Welwers, which is O'Neill's now. But you have to remember, all this traffic and all these cars parked here, there was none of that there, it was all sealed off. So the only vehicles in here was military vehicles or vehicles that were making deliveries. There was a Chinese restaurant just opened up, and it was very cosmopolitan to have a Chinese restaurant. But when we had a bit of spare time, we would go fishing down here at the quay, at the river, and all we would ever catch was eels. And somebody says that the Chinese would buy the eels off you, so we brought them up, these big 10 eels, and we knocked at the door. Hey, mister, you want to buy these eels? He came out and threw onions at us and all, told us to get stuffed. So we just threw the eels in the bin. Palace Cinema was over here, so after we sold the Tullys, and if we weren't going home and we had a good payday, we would stay behind. We'd go and watch the film. I'm watching Tora, the war film, and Tom Thumb. Of course, it was known as the Flay Pit, and you used to get searched on the way in case you had a bomb, but they also searched in case, because there was boys who used to shoot things open and break the projector screen. So when you reached down here, you started trying to sell in the bars and that. And if you could sell Tullys in the bars, it was usually good, because if there had a few on them, you might usually tell you to keep a change. There used to be a checkpoint here, and you had to get searched going through. So you had pippers, they would still search you, and that they could harass you if you wanted to. But so we try to keep well on them, keep well on with everybody. We don't want anything interfering with business. Hawaii. So there used to be a wee cafe on here called the Rainbow Cafe, and we used to treat ourselves. The fish and chips or whatever was going cheapest after. You know, you worked up a hunger when you were out doing your selling and doing some business, so you had to get your feet in you. But here was the main stand outside Welwers, which is now O'Neill's, and that's where Doogie and Whitey, my oldest brother, but a singer now, Doogie just thinks he's Frank Sinatra, and over there they used to sell that many pippers. They used to have to sit on top of them. There were piles and piles of them, and they made the big money. That's where the high footfall was. So to try and outdo them, we would sneakily sneak in here some, you know, and try and catch a few of their customers on the way over. So it's all changed now. This was Waterloo Place. And down here was a beautiful Victorian toilets underground, all brass fittings and skylights and all that there. Beautiful. Seems they're still buried down on there now. You could open them up again if you wanted. So this is where life started getting a bit complicated for people doing business, especially us, the wee Tully boys, because this is where the huge checkpoint was, where you get searched entering from the Bogside and the Craigan. So this was where they concentrated on most of their searching. So you had to put your hands up and get searched, and you get frisked. And on the way out, you went through a turnstile. You didn't need searched on the way out. But we had to exit it here, because this is where my wee run started. You know, where you had customers. So this was my patch here. This is where I had my run. So this is William Street. People might recognise it from Bloody Sunday 1972 where the Paras moved in. My first stop would have been called Andy Trissie's Bar. A lot of men drinking in there that had just finished their work, especially on a Friday. You could pick up a few tips. My father could usually find him in there, and maybe at Christmas time we'd even buy him a pint, which was unusual because Trissie's in the bar used to love us bringing the change in from, you know, all the 2p's and 5p's and all that. They loved to get the change. There was a wee man from Tipperary, fixed electrical goods here. He was always a good tipper, always do my Christmas present too. And then I done Qunn's fish shop over here. And I had to watch myself because McCool's, the newsagent here, they were actually selling the pepper, you know, from inside their shop. So you didn't hang about here too long. You moved past them and let them have their trade. Colsey. Used to be a very popular bookmakers over there, and you always could sell quite a few poopers on there because the men loved their poopers. As I say, they always wanted to see who was dead. We fish shop was in there. Qunn's. I actually went to university with a man that owned that, Desi Quinn, years later, and he remembered me from that time. Now, you'll never believe this, but we were witnessing deaths, gunshots, gunfire, bombs, in here, day in, day out, regular. But the thing we were scared of most was if you came over here, there was always a chance you could get robbed by a bogman. They would just, you seen a telly boy, they would just tap you up and shake you down and see what fell out of your pocket, give you a couple of boots and away they went. So we weren't scared of the bombs and on there, we were scared of them getting robbed by a mad bogman. I used to make my way back in after doing them customers, and I used to make my way down to some customers I had here in the Strand Road area, which meant you'd come out from behind the barricades, and now you have to make your way back in again, so it meant getting searched again and all that. There's a junction of Roswell Street and William Street. Got the nickname at that time as being Agro Corner, because if you wanted to see a riot, this was the guaranteed space. This was where you came, and you were guaranteed to get a riot nearly on a daily basis. Sometimes they called it a Saturday matinee, and they'd go home for lunch and then come back for another riot after tea time. My brother Eddie was one of the older Tilly boys, and he was actually selling the Tillys before 1969, the Battle of Bogside. And he was selling during it. He says there was brilliant trade during the Battle of Bogside 1969, because he says he used to sell about 24, the RUC men in here at the barricades. And then he used to come out and used to sell another 24 to the rioters outside, the people on the Bogside and at the flats and that. He says it was good business. Sad times as it was, the world was changing. The city was going to change forever. And the local papers were recording it. Can't understand why the Derry Journal never had people out selling on the streets like a Tilly. So the General Post Office is still there today where it was then, but it was bombed out then and moved up temporarily beside our Tilly box up to the YMCA, the old empty hall in East Wall. The postmen, they were always away home, so they weren't great for buying Tillys of you, but what they were good for was you always asked them, have you any elastics, mister, you know, for making slingshots, because they always had pockets full of elastics. These streets were all sealed off, protecting the commercial centre from bombings. British Army had a post, we had a camp down here on that market. They had a checkpoint, not a check, this was sealed off. They had a checkpoint over here. So we never really had any much dealings up in that direction with the Tullys. Even the bar up there, there was a couple of bars up there, the Derby and the Park Bar, but it wasn't worth your while going so far out of the way, maybe even just to sell one copy. So you stick to your wee route. And just like you following my route. So I came over here, there was a pet shop called Stuart and Henry's there. I used to do that. And then there was a Lochswolly bus depot, but that got bombed out. So they just moved over there and over on here to Patrick Street. Forgot to mention that over there, we witnessed a soldier was shot dead, and I'll tell you when you're around. But this, if you were lucky enough, you might have caught the gears coming out of the factory and made a few sales, you know, if you were lucky and if you timed it right. Used to do tonnage bar here. I used to pick up a few because tonnage bars then became after. I think that after the Lochswolly bus depot was blown up, tonnage bar, Lochswolly buses left from around here. And I think that was sort of like used as the meeting point, or somewhere you could sit on out of the rain, have a beer while you were waiting on the bus or whatever. So, there's a checkpoint here too, checking all the vehicles coming in for explosive devices and that. Nearly sure Macaulay's shop is on here where we all got our outfitted. And it's mad to think that years later, it actually was Breslin's shop, ours. But I used to do McClafferty's, a bar down here, and you get a lot of dockers and a lot of sailors on that, and if I can mind rightly, it was always covered. And no foreign coins and notes from the foreign sailors. Usually got sales on there and that. And over here, used to do a dentist, few professional people on that, and Fiorentini's restaurant, which is still there. I'd have made my way then round the back of the quay. Round the back of the quay, you were always guaranteed to get 6 or 7 sales off the dockers, because the dockers were very generous, and every one of them would have give you a tip. I don't know whether they were generous to everybody, but they all seemed to know our names. You know, we were all called Young Dusties because my father was Dusty, and they actually served a while working at the docks along with the Millers, his family. But Busty Rush, as I was telling you, showed me and learnt me all the tricks of the trade around there. And these ships were in Greek registered and separate, whatever. Anyway, and we used to say, "Come on these," and I said, well, "What are we going on these for?" You hardly sell any tillies. These people, they probably don't even speak English, never mind read the tilly. He says, "But we'll get keep quiet money." And I said, "What's keep quiet money?" So he took me on the first ship, and he goes down. Nobody even stops. He's there checking or nothing. And down he goes, and he starts knocking on the doors and opening up the cabins. And he goes in, there's a gear jumps up out of bed, pulling the blankets around, and going, "Jesus, don't be telling me, ma." And she would give Busty £1, and that was him. He made more money out of that one transaction, the keep quiet money, than he did for the whole day, the whole week's sales probably. At the cinema over there, the Strand Cinema. We'd have been away home before the queue started for at 7 o'clock. We'd have been away home. How you doing?
Hiya.
As I was saying about having your wee stands, this used to be one of my wee stands too. It's called Paul's Fashions. I think my older sister called it the cheaper version of Austin's. You got the style, but it wasn't as expensive. But I was standing here and I'd be shouting me, Tilly, Tilly, Tilly. And there was a checkpoint up here. And I think it was a Saturday I was standing here. And I heard the shots firing. And at that time, instead of running away, the people were running towards the gunfire, which is strange, running towards it. And whenever we ran up there was a concrete British Army Sanger with a 60 coming through, and there was a sheet sort of. So we got a peek on him, we could see a man lying dead, soldier, with the blood still warm, steaming and that. It was just normal. And then a few weeks after that, I was standing here. The security man came running out of Paul's Fashions, and everybody at that time going to work seemed to have a duffel bag. And he runs out and he places a duffel bag there, and he shouts, bomb, scatter, clear. So we all run. And that's what they used to do. They used to, security men, if they didn't prevent the bomb getting in, sometimes would carry it out. And then I mean, later years reading back in the IRS, and then they were going to put, anti-personnel device so they'll explode if they're lifted, and then that all stopped. We used to stand over here too, in Felix Mulhern's, the Grand Central Bar. I'd got hit by bombs a few times. But it was a good spot to stand in because Paul's Fashions, you had to stand outside the door, but over there you could stand inside the hallway and you could get the shelter. One of the doctors around there used to buy the pipper and used to give you a good tip, and then he used to sometimes ask you, would you run around the shop and get him 10 Woodbine or 10 part drive, and always give you a good tip. And we only found out in later years, when we were a lot older, he was actually illiterate, so we don't know why he was buying a pipper if he couldn't read it. Radio Rentals was over there where Fergal Sherky worked, went on to be the Undertones, where you could rent out your TV. They laugh at you now and you tell them you used to rent out washing machines and you rent out your TV. So on here wouldn't have been much traffic except for delivery vehicles. And then especially at night time, after about 6 o'clock when the commerce and trade stopped, it just became a ghost town. So people started then taking their entertainment in their own areas. So up in Craigan here, a lot of it would have revolved around the pubs, the Beach Tree, Saoirse, Telstar, and then the community centre with pantomimes and all that. So the army were in there. British Army. The old police station was there, the old Vic. We just caught the tail end of that there. The Vic Barracks, the old Victoria Barracks. There's a lot of pictures. I remember that getting built. The BT tower, because my brother-in-law was working on it. And I used to talk to him about his unit. And I reckon it's a very ugly building. And then you've got the bank here, which is painted and they're doing their best. That was a very ugly building. But I find out in later years, reading up in my history, what happened then with the bombs is construction and architecture moved to be trying to be bomb safe, less glass. And that for the shatter. On here, the embassy got hit a whole load of times with bombs. And sometimes you were a Tilly boy, there was a wee perk when bombs went off. Terrible as they were, and people dying and the property being destroyed. But a policeman might feel a pity on you, or not, and you're staying up in Strath, they go down there have 5 customers, and he might let you sneak through, the bomb cordon, after it's went off. And as you were walking along, you might find a pound note lying there, somewhere, or a packet of fags, was blew out of the shop. Then we became great experts then. After the firebombing campaigns, they would have firebomb sales. So I used to be able to, my brother, Dougie and Emerson, everybody had a nickname. This was the nicknames the boys down the Tilly box. You had Rat McLaughlin, Sock McLaughlin, you had Busty Rush, Whitey Rush, Blackie Rush, you had Brass Breslin, you had Bulko Breslin, you had Eccles Breslin, you had Dougie Breslin, you had, it's all nicknames, Starsy, Whitey O'Hagan, Wags O'Hagan. I mean, nicknames. Nobody knew one or with their own names. My mother always says, like, at one time there was 5 of us out doing the Tillys at the one time, and she was saying at Christmas, the 5 of us coming home with our pockets full of all that there, it made a huge difference to the economics of the house. I'll tell you what, it learned you a lot about life too, and about how to look after yourself and earning your own money. So down here at the General Post Office, you can see still marks on the walls from the bomb explosions. It's all very gentrified now. So there used to be a lot of bombs on here because this is the post office to destroy the government infrastructure, and it had a huge impact on here because it's so close and compact together. It's all been fixed up now. So that's actually was called a customs house. Now it had something to do with the customs coming in with the port. I think the McNulty family out of our street in Craigan worked there. I mean, selling a few tillies in there. But now it's a restaurant. And so people might, if you go normally now to a port, it's usually sealed in somewhere away from the city centre, and you have to go through turnstiles and guards and all that there. But whenever we were up, this was a wooden wharf just down back here, and all the keys, the sailors and the ships just parked all on there, and it's just, you just walked on board and they walked off, and there was harbour policemen, because we always wondered why these harbour policemen, they look different to the ordinary police. We get harbour police, but you just walked along and you could go on the boats and have a look around on it, and they'd chat to you, and the dockers would chat to you, and it was a hive of activity. And it was actually quite an exciting place to be. And we used to love, when the weather was good, sitting down here so we could just watch all the activity over here at Ebrington Barracks. Because there seemed to be nothing more than a constant stream of helicopters landing and departing and landing and departing. And as well as that there, you were able to watch what we called the black divers, was the birds. The guillemots must be going on the foil and all. So with the new Peace Bridge there, wasn't there in our time. If you wanted to go to water side, it was a long, long walk up over the Blue Bridge, Craigavon Bridge. And there was a big campaign. People didn't want the port moved from here. They wanted it smack bang in the centre, but it had to be dredged. Not the economics of it, when you look back now, it should have been away out of Lissahalli years ago. But it was good to have it on here. And actually, if I can remember rightly, the dockers that took the spuds and the cargoes on and off were more inclined to drinking down here in the Alleyman's and McClafferty's and that, and the Strand Bar ferries, whereas the boys that done the other boats up here, the Glasgow men or whatever they were called, they would more likely drink around here, you know, in the Gainsborough and the Foyle Street bars. Like, it's funny, there was a demarcation. So behind me here was the site of an iconic building, the City Hotel. Now I don't have any memories of the City Hotel being open and functioning because it was blown up and destroyed by the time I came on the scene. But my brothers used to sell peppers on it and used to run messages for it. I think one of the Tully boys actually then got a job lighting the fires and, you know, the rooms and that. But by the time we came along, it was sealed off. But we were able to sneak in. And the bar and the ballroom and it was still left us when the explosion. Somebody in later years was saying me it was because the insurance assessors have to see exactly, you know, how it's left. But when we went in, there was a piano was still there, and there was still beers and lemonade and all, you know, all still stocked. And that was our playground, along with loads of old derelict buildings along Foyle Street. And then we used to have a game we played over here in the bus depot. And if you were caught, whilst we were waiting on the peppers, if you were caught, you were locked in a boot until they caught the rest of the gang, and then these were all released. But one day the poopers came early and everybody dived to go and get the poopers and forgot about the two guys in the boot who ended up in Belfast in the boot of a bus. we used to call them rats with wings, and there was one particularly cruel boy who used to do the tillage, took great delight in tying their legs together and throwing them off up a buildings. Hey. There were millions of them used to be down along the quay, because it used to be out on the corn, you know, and all the stuff for the farmers, all the stuff that birds really loved. Another one of my customers used to wear Maddens. It was actually, believe it or not, a shop solely for the purpose of selling cigarettes and cigars and all the stuff associated with it, because smoking was an hour, man. When I was at school in St. Joseph's, the senior boys were allowed to smoke, but they had to get a light off the teacher. Imagine that, saying that, eh? Duffy's Bookies used to be there. It used to be gaslit with a wee handle, used to be on there. Some of the Tilly boys got addicted to the Belfast machines on there, you know, you had to nudge, you know. You Joe Stewart's shop over here in the corner at the walls. A wee treat to that used to be able to buy a packet of 3 Jaffa cakes, you know, 3. We used to get on great with the busmen. And a lot of the busmen used to develop relationships, you know, with the Tilly boys and that, where we'd run messages for them, you know, because they couldn't get out of their bus and all, you run the shop for them, and then you actually, if you were doing nothing, you might travel around the town on the bus route, you know, stand at the front talking to them while you're hauling on the rail. Imagine that, health and safety. But that's what you did. And then they had all their stories they tell about the hijackings, and then this bus depot here was forever getting bombed. They had a lovely wee cafe on it we used to use as well, but it was a porta cabin. A wee bar there, porters have been there a lifetime. So in the mid-70s, 77, 78, when I was coming to the end of my Tilly career, they'd closed down the Tilly box with Sturdy and Billy Merton up here, and what you actually did then, you just gathered at these steps here, and the Tilly van would arrive from Belfast, or arrive from the waterside. I think that's where we printed the Derry edition then, and somebody was in charge, and they would hand you out the papers here, and this became your HQ, an outdoor. No luxury anymore of having a Tilly box, so I left shortly after that, getting to Ulford, and there was a new generation came along then. So the older people was telling me that the original Tilly box, even before anything that I ever knew here, was actually over here. Eddie Gallagher up in the bar was telling me he was a Tilly boy back in the 50s. So this was East Wall. It was actually full of, in the old days, hotels and the YMCA, and was the luxurious housing and hotels and that, but it became slum housing then and was divided into flats, and it had to be knocked down. Whenever they knocked it down then, there was these series of tunnels, and we used to love playing in these tunnels, and you could go in and you could come out further on up the street. And everybody's been on about these tunnels to go back to siege and that, but I think the expert opinion now is that they weren't actually tunnels. They were actually passageways and basements, which was traditional for that time. So even if you go up here to the War Memorial and the Diamond, there's a huge basement, and underneath still there, which could be getting used anywhere else. It could be used as a restaurant or a museum. And you can still get in through a manhole to see it. It's a huge basement, but we're not using the resources we had. So another important part of the town for the Tilly boys was over at Foyle Street, the old Foyle Street. We don't know nothing about it now. It's the tax office and Foyle side and the tourist thing. But over there was a hive of pubs, the Moore and Bar and the Red Deader, the Red Devil. Stretford End was they called it, and then you had the other motorway in, and then on over, because the Americans didn't stop close their base here until 1977, and the American sailors were always very popular with the girls, and one of the places for gathering was over in the bars over here. So we used to try and get a bit of keep quiet money over there as well. No wee boys coming on, chancing your Irish law. Americans were good tippers too. There's one of them in particular who married a girl beside us, Don King. He used to get the Tilly boys, he used to get them Marlboro cigarettes. So you had all these Tilly boys running around, they weren't the size of nothing, with curtains and packets of Marlboro cigarettes that were got for tax-free and very, very cheap in the American biz. So that would be me making my way back after my ruin, maybe having survived a bomb, an odd shooting, not getting robbed by the bog man, and witnessing all sorts of goings on in one thing and another, and back up to Tilly box then they pay your dues for the papers you get, return your unsold copies, and sneak a copy for my dad for free for up in the house. And then if you done well, your ma had to get half, your mother had to get half the money. All the Tilly boys was the same. Your mother got halfers. So if there were 6 of us coming on, she was getting halfers. It was nearly more than much the income from benefits or whatever it was, because my dad was in the dole at that time. So it was good economics. I forgot to say to you that when we were down selling the Tillys down on the Strand Road, the boys, the sisters of our house, were actually on working in the Dolphin Cafe. So everybody had a win. The others were out chopping sticks, helping milkmen, whatever. But ours was the Tillys. So back round. I think it's worth remembering that this place was bizarre, crazy. This was 1972, 1973, 1974. There was bombs. Sometimes there was a bomb going off there, and a bomb going off there, and you know there was all sorts of things happening. But they also was just the norm. You just get on with it. Well, I suppose at the end of the day, you had it. Look at that there, found 50 pence a day. That was wages for two also way back in 1973. I'm talking about wages for a week.